He stands on a marsh path where the ground remembers rain. Something glows low over the reeds, blue-white, foxfire bright, hovering the way a moth hovers over a match it doesn't understand. The air smells of peat and old summer. Far off, a bell tests 3 notes, pauses, then 1. The light sways as if it heard. It is a guide if you are careful, a ditch if you are not. He cups the lamp he brought, and the stranger light inclines like a listener before straightening, obedient. Hey friends, lamps low, voices soft. Tonight we trace ghost lights, from will-o'-the-wisp to porch cams, real history, told calmly. Add your City Plus time and your device in the comments to join our night map. And tell me, what strange light have you seen? No jumps, just patience. Let's start at the marsh. Light before fear. A quiet walk through the world's ghost lights, bog flames and saint candles, lich gates and lantern watch, lighthouse flares and rail signals, gaslight to neon to LED sensors, showing how one small rule, light before fear, learned to speak through bells, bulbs, and cameras. He begins where travelers first told each other to keep pockets heavy with bread and names. The bog, the fen, the low ground that drinks footsteps. Lights appear here without wicks. They float just high enough to be mistaken for a guide. Foxfire in old books, will-o'-the-wisp in mouths that like a story's bend. He keeps his voice even. Gases can burn, fungi can glow, eyes can lie. And still the light waits exactly at the choice in the path. He notes how the old rule is spoken, light before fear, but with care. A lantern is cupped, not waved. A companion is counted out loud. If the stray glow drifts left, feet keep to the right. When the bell from the church on the better ground carries across the reeds, it chooses the patient rhythm. 3 notes, a pause, 1. And the stranger light answers by leaning and then remembering itself. He describes the small protections handed down like recipes. A scrap of iron in a pocket. A candle stub saved from a saint's day and lit only when the wind can be trusted. An ember ferried home in a clay pot, because shared fire behaves. On the plank stile, someone's thumb leaves a smear that dries as 5 ridges, a pause. 1 ridge a breath too long, the way prints do when damp and deciding. He ends the watch with a simple image. The marsh light holds at the ditch and does not cross. On the safe side, a lantern warms a ring into a palm. The bell counts once more and chooses silence like a bow. The path keeps its sentences in order, and no one names the light out loud on the way home. He carries the glow under timber roofs where coffins once rested out of rain and trouble. Lich gates, oak dark as tea, hinges bright from use. Candles bloom in glass where breath can't bully them. The parish sets rules. Lanterns only, not torches. Stand inside the gate to count. The bell chooses saints at its own pace, All Hallows, All Souls, and the night answers with wind that wants to participate. He points to the way light is portioned like bread. 1 taper to borrow the great candle. 1 coal to carry home and convince the hearth to behave. Faces lean toward flame and look briefly like the ancestors that taught them. A boy at the gate raises a horn lantern and watches a pale shine gather just outside the posts, as if shy of consecration. It brightens when the bell says 3, pauses, then 1. The verger says draft, and drafts are a kind of mercy. He opens the vestry ledger, neat lines for oil and wicks, reprimands for lanterns abroad after curfew. Between entries, a faint tally appears in graphite. 4 marks and a 5th crossed through, in a hand the clerk won't own. When the book is closed, the leather warms in a circle the size of a candle plate and cools obediently, like a treaty remembered. He leaves the gate with a habit small enough to pack in a sleeve. Step through, not around, bless the latch, keep the lamp low when thresholds are speaking. Outside the posts, a foxfire shine waits at the road edge and then yields, polite, the way weather yields to bells when asked correctly. He moves along streets that learn to sleep in sequence, watchmen with hooks and rattles, shutters trimmed to keep sparks home. Curfew is a courtesy to roofs. Lights go out by order so chimneys won't think about climbing into each other's business. Still, a few windows burn longer on named nights. A short bright waits at corners where stories like to stand. He describes the call and response of ordered dark. The watch knocks the hour on wood. 3, a pause, 1, because patterns travel better than speeches. From an alley mouth, a match flares and fails, then glimmers again without a hand. The watchman raises his lantern. The gleam withdraws to the mouth of a drain like a cat with manners. He chalks a cross on the post, private courage, and by morning the mark shows faintly on the street side too, as if Oak learned to speak both directions. He notes fines in the town book for wasting tallow and for walking with light unhooded. Light is ration, rumor, proof. In hard winters, windows set bowls and frames with 1 sugared almond each. Sweetness for the passing dead who will not come in. By dawn, the bowls are cooler by a number that feels like arithmetic, and no wrappers exist because wrappers have not been invented. He leaves the hour to itself with a rule any roof understands. Bank the coals, not the kindness. The alley glimmer keeps to its corner as long as the lantern is held like a promise instead of a threat. He lifts the lens where water writes its own ledgers. A tower sits on rock. The keeper's hands smell of oil and rope. Fresnel glass makes a single lamp many. A clockwork weight persuades light to sweep a number of seconds that ships will memorize. Outside the lantern room, another glow sometimes waits on the black water, level with the human eye, patient as a bad idea. He lists what the books ask of keepers: trim, polish, wind, log. Observed false fire to south, one writes. Responded with service flash. The wick answers cleanly in the ordered sequence. 3, a pause, 1, and the sea glow leans as if to admit it heard. In fog, a bell learns to be a buoy and the buoy learns to be a bell. The tone comes back from nowhere with the old knock inside it. He opens a storm door to show the catwalk where ghosts prefer to avoid railings. Salt dries in delicate maps. Footprints hold longer than they should. 4 together, a 5th turned slightly inward, because people think when they turn. The keeper's log warms under his hand in a circle exact as the lamp base. Between neat lines, the pencil leaves 4 marks and crosses the 5th through because pencils like habits. He leaves the lantern turning in its duty, a promise to strangers, and carries the lesser fire to bed in a covered lamp, because keepers live by 2 lights, the one that names water correctly and the one that doesn't waste a room. He follows the bright along iron where distances became timetables. Red, yellow, green. Orders the eye can obey at speed. Lanterns swing in patterns a body can read even when rain writes its own language on the night. Crews count with their chins. A signal shivers to green and then, once, shows 3 quick pails. A pause. 1, that no book admits. He tells the ghost train stories quietly because steel deserves respect. A headlight on a curve where no schedule allows it. A brakeman's lamp, seen under the trestle 3 floods after the trestle was rebuilt. The air smells like hot bearings and damp timbers. In the yard office, a dispatch clock blinks 9:12 and, for one breath, 9:13 before remembering its assignment. The switchman writes bulb because railroads prefer nouns. He holds up a blue flag, the kind that keeps hands safe under cars. It reflects without caring who holds it. On the pole, glove grease, paint, a print that should be ordinary, 5 ridges, a pause, 1 a touch too long, like a name said by someone learning your language. The lantern on the desk warms a neat ring into the blotter and cools when moved the way good tools behave for people who respect them. He walks the right of way with one caution only. If a light where no light belongs asks you to follow, count your steps out loud and keep the lantern low. The track accepts mathematics and discourages romance. He brings the line ashore to cities that burned gently on purpose. Lamplighters carry poles and a list. They tilt evening open, 1 flame at a time. Gas mantles bloom along lanes like cautious flowers. Later, Neon takes that job personally. letters bent into speech, windows that don't need anyone's help to hold attention. Between, 1,000 windows discover how to be beacons for each other. He listens to the summertime city where moths write the news in spellings only they can read. A single globe flickers 3 times, pauses, then once, transformer, the foreman says, and writes a number on a card. In the hotel above, a bellhop's pageboy hat remembers 5 ridges from a handprint on the lift door that mirrors the one inside, glass learning to admire itself. He notes the blackout years when light had to learn manners again. Paint crawls over curbs like moonlight taught to stand still. Windows cross themselves with tape. Yet even then, under shades and under orders, a sliver escapes the rules and behaves like a visitor. 3, a pause. 1, thin as a wire plucked inside plaster. The warden calls lights, and kitchens answer out, and bowls on sills cool by a count someone could check if anyone wanted the room to be less brave. He lets the street return to its vanity, neon blinking its vowels, apartments learning their lamps, but keeps the small rule in the pocket where it does the most good: light before fear. Shade is for rest, not temptation. Bells are for counting, not invitations. If a bulb learns a pattern it wasn't paid to learn, make room on the sill for a small plate and keep the latch. He carries the line indoors to rooms that sleep upright. Velvet, rope, dust that sparkles when told to. Empty house, dead calm. Somewhere in the flies, a forgotten cue waits to be forgiven. A single lamp stands at center. Metal stand, caged bulb, cord that knows the way to the wing. The lamp is called many things in many companies, but most crews use the simplest name and the oldest rule: light before fear. He keeps his voice even while superstition and safety shake hands. The ghost light is for ankles and edges, trap lids and orchestra pits. It also keeps a stage from believing it has been abandoned. Old hands wheel it out after places are struck and let it burn until call. New hands learn to coil the cord in figure eights so it won't remember anger. The lamp warms a circle on deck, clean as a coin, exactly the size a palm would make if palms could be made of light. He walks the aisles that watch like wells. Seat numbers shine in brass. Exit signs blink the same green they blink everywhere. At 9:12 one hums politely, and at 9:13 it hums again. On the back of a house door, someone years ago drew a small chalk cross at knee height, private courage where knees work. By morning, the cross shows faintly on the outer face, as if wood practiced both directions, the same way a line learns to go in and out of a breath without help. He opens the prompt book in the prompt corner, where cues live like grammar. P9, house to half. P12, go. Between neat pencil lines, a faint tally appears, 4 marks and a 5th crossed through, in a hand no stage manager will admit. When he sets his palm on the binder, the buckram warms in a tidy ring and keeps the heat as if the lamp had reached through paper to thank him for reading. He listens to the house the way crew do after strike. Building breath, dimmer racks whispering to themselves, soft clicks of metal cooling from applause. The ghost light pops once the way filaments do. Then, as if remembering a class it took long ago from bells and door knockers, gives 3 small pulses, a pause, 1. The board op says voltage. The carpenter says mice. Both are good words for staying calm near edges. He visits the stage door where stories enter politely. Inside the glass is a print from someone steadying a coffee. Outside, a faint twin appears without the courtesy of a hand. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge longer than it should be. The wipe cloth warms and keeps the shape exactly 1 sentence too long. On the hook beside the door hangs a cheap mask from last season's panto. The empty hook next to it looks used, paint faintly warm, circle clean in the dust higher than a comfortable reach. He crosses the deck where spike tape remembers marks like old promises. A trap lid that's been safe for decades sighs and decides to be safe again. In the wing, a coil of rope shows 5 dusty ridges where no glove touched, 4 together, a 5th turned slightly inward the way a hand pauses before it goes back to work. The ghost light does not brighten. It does not dim. It simply keeps the edge of the pit from pretending it is part of the floor. He opens the booth window and lets the sound of outside pretend to be part of the show. Late bus breaks, 2 steps on wet pavement, a bell from a church that keeps better time than the clock over the soundboard. The bell chooses 3 notes, a pause, then 1. The lamp at center inclines almost imperceptibly, like a listener who will not interrupt a story it has heard for 100 years. He ends the watch with the ritual that is also just good housekeeping: coil cord, check cage, log burn. In the margin of the run sheet, the tidy tally appears again, as if pencil lead could walk. 4, and a 5th crossed through. He wheels the lamp to center and leaves it there, because stages, like marsh paths and lich gates, behave better when something small remembers to shine. Light before fear. Count what matters. Let the room rest as a room, not a pit or a story that forgot its ending. The ghost light keeps its circle, and the theater pretends not to hear the old pattern teaching the dark to wait. He carries the light down where floors are guesses and roofs are decisions. Shaft doors, iron cage, signal bell that speaks in numbers. Timber smells like wet bone. The cage falls polite and fast. Air presses the chest. The liftman's hand rides the brake as if calming a horse. At bottom, the world changes tense. Headlamps nick the dark. In the lamp room, 100 little suns wait behind wire. He keeps his voice even where history and hazard share a desk. The Davy lamp learned to keep fire civil. Flame inside gauze so gas can't learn a shortcut. Miners watched that flame the way sailors watched a star. If it stretched thin and blue, callers said fire damp and counted everyone back in. On the bench, a lamp warms around on wood, clean as a coin, exact as a promise. And the warmth keeps for a breath after the lamp is lifted, as if timber had practiced remembering. He opens the tally board where brass checks hang like patient fruit. 1 disc for each body going in, its twin left on a peg for the count. Between neat rows, a pencil hand that belongs to no one draws 4 small marks, and a 5th crossed through, tidy as accounting. The board attendant wipes at nothing with a rag that warms his palm in a circle the size of a dinner roll, and cools obediently when he lets it go. He listens to the seam's old manners. Drips talk in measures, timbers creak their vowels, rails complain quietly when they have been trusted too long. Most sounds are patience, some are not. From inside the face, a hammer sound walks the gallery like a thought. 3 knocks, a pause, 1, thin as a wire plucked in coal. Men call it roof talk. Old mouths call it knockers and nod as if to strangers who share a trade. The deputy chalks a cross on a prop, private courage at shoulder height. By morning, the chalk shows faintly on the other side as if Oak learned to speak both directions under pressure. He lays a hand on the canary's cage because some rules are older than policy. Air is fine today. Feathers are only feathers. The bird leans toward a headlamp as if the lamp were a visiting sun, and then settles on its perch with professional grace. The ledger in the deputy's pocket shows times, 9:12, and, for one held breath, 9:13 at once, before the pencil scratches loudly enough to convince the numbers to behave. He walks a heading where 3 helmets burn steady and the 4th throws a pulse it wasn't told to. 3 flickers, a pause, 1, then returns to line as if embarrassed. Dust takes fingerprints too easily down here. On a rib of coal, 5 ridges bloom where no glove pressed. 4 together. A 5th turned slightly inward the way a hand pauses before it changes its mind. The lampman calls it wet and wraps the thought in a rag. He notes the small registry of mercy that keeps crews from spending courage too fast. Tea tins dented to fit the hand, bread stuffed in pockets, a coin in the cap, saints in a button tin whether or not anyone believes in saints. In a side gallery, a wall niche holds a stub of candle older than policy. It inclines politely when the bell upshaft tests its code. 3, a pause, 1, and then straightens like a child told to sit up. He steps back to pit bottom for the changing of hours. Boots mark the puddles, Prints hold their shape longer than geology should allow. Four together, a fifth turned slightly inward at the tram line where choices are made. The lamp room cage door clicks and writes its own small log with every spring. A brass check comes home to its peg. Its twin leaps to the hand of a man who could find it in the dark. He ends the watch at the onset, where lamps are traded like breath. The record book receives neat numbers, and between them the pencil hand leaves its quiet receipt again. 4 marks, a fifth crossed through. From the shaft, a breeze with a job to do speaks the old pattern without instruments. 3 soft touches, a pause, 1, returning the dark to the men and the men to the dark on terms both understand. He wheels one lamp a fraction closer to center and leaves it burning, light before fear. Then rides the cage up, feeling the earth release his ribs one floor at a time. He carries the glow out where wood forgets streets and remembers swell, night water, rising weather, rigging that sings without asking. The sky is wool and brass. The horizon takes its lamp away. Then the charge builds the way a name builds before it is spoken. At the yardarm, at the truck of the mast, at the bowsprit where decisions begin, a small obedient flame appears, blue-white, fox-calm, clinging like a candle that doesn't need a wick. Sailors who have learned not to waste words call it St. Elmo's fire and let it speak first. He keeps his voice even where folklore and physics share a cup, a corona where air thins its manners, ions making lace over tarred rope, weather showing its teeth in a smile that would rather not be blamed. You don't touch it. You watch how it chooses. If it favors mastheads, you trim for prudence. If it kisses the bow, you count the seconds to thunder and decide how brave to be. On the companionway brass, a ring of warmth answers the palm, clean as a coin, exact as a promise, and keeps its heat a beat after the hand leaves as if metal practiced remembering. He opens the log where storm watches are spelled like prayers. Light upon the main, a mate writes, comforting to the men. Between neat lines for wind and bearing, a pencil hand that belongs to no one draws 4 small marks and a fifth crossed through, tidy as accounting. The page smudges to graphite under the thumb and warms in a circle the size of a lamp plate before cooling like a gentleman. He listens to the ship's old language while the sea chooses its new one. Blocks creak their vowels. Canvas mutters advice. The bell on the forecastle counts the hour for hands who must not forget they are hands. Tonight the bell tests 3 notes, pauses, and adds 1. The little flames on the yardarms incline as if hearing and then straighten, obedient, the way a child sits up when a story reaches the good part. Someone says omen, someone else says electricity. Both words keep water out of ears, which is their job. He walks the deck with the pilot who prefers a rule to a myth. Light before fear, the pilot says, and cups the binnacle as if shielding a saint. The compass card lies to no one. On the glass, a print appears where the hand steadied. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge just a breath too long, and a faint twin blooms outside the pane as if breath learned a polite crossing. The wipe cloth warms, keeps the shape 1 sentence too long, then remembers its profession and dries. He notes the rituals that make electricity behave like company. A bit of iron in the pocket, not for magic, but for mind. A chalk cross, small, low, on the inside face of the mast. Private courage in a height where knees don't go. By morning, the mark shows faintly on the weather side, as if Oak practiced speaking both directions through paint and pitch. The bosun rolls his eyes and does not erase it. He has seen rails glow blue like the edge of a knife and figured there was no harm in courtesy. He watches how the fire chooses hierarchy. It crowns the main before the mizzen, the fore before the bowsprit, and only after the polite order is done does it taste the taffrail, thin as a cat's whisker learning rain. A lantern set by the break of the deck throws a halo exactly the size a palm would make if light had a hand. The flame at the masthead brightens 3 breaths, pauses, then 1, and returns to the patient clinging that means the storm likes you enough to warn you first. He steps to the lee rail where the black water keeps its own counsel. Far off, another ship's mast shows hinges of blue. Not many, not showy, just enough to let strangers know they are not alone in arithmetic. Between swells, a pale, coin-sized glow skates along a wet line and vanishes where ropes go out of names and into water. No one follows it with their eyes too long. Eyes are for rigging, and rigging is for tomorrow. He ends the watch with work that looks like reverence and is lash what asks to be lashed, ease what begs, shorten sail until the deck sighs in agreement. The bell sounds the change with better manners than the sky. The flames thin and withdraw the way people do when thanked correctly. In the log, under weather and wind, he writes what most centuries would recognize. Counted 3, then 1. Lamps steady. Crew quieter. He closes the book, palms the warm ring on the brass one last time, and lets the mast keep its small blue listeners until they choose to go. Light before fear. Keep the course. Hold to the knocks you can name. The ship pretends not to know the old pattern has taught the storm how to be polite. He carries the glow down to water that keeps secrets kindly. The tide breathes under a sky without lamps. Plankton wait in their billions like vowels that won't be spoken until a finger draws the first letter. Then the cove remembers a trick. Each touch becomes a star. A heel scuffs sand and ink-blue water writes back in electric handwriting. Brief, blue-white, admitting and denying in the same breath. The old mouths called it sea fire. Guidebooks say bioluminescence. Both are true as long as no one shouts. He keeps his voice even where wonder and weather share a cup. Dinoflagellates flash when jostled. Calcium channels gossip. A wave turns its shoulder and the shoulder says yes in light. You don't chase it. You stand where the beach meets patience and let the tide count you. A child lifts a stick and draws 3 short lines, pauses, then 1. The cove answers with a soft bright that lifts and fades exactly where the lines were. The parent says science softly and does not ask it to be louder. He lays a palm on the pier rail. Salt keeps score there. Wood remembers elbows. Beneath his hand, the grain warms in a ring the size of a tea saucer and keeps a second's worth of heat after he lifts it, as if timber had learned to imitate glows it cannot make. On the slat beside, a print appears where no hand steadied. 5 ridges, a pause, one ridge just a breath too long. Sea damp turned into a small confession. The wipe cloth takes it and keeps the warmth a sentence longer than cloth should. He opens the harbor master's log in the little office that smells like rope and paper maps. Phosphorescence at bar, someone wrote years ago. Children laughing. Between bearings and tide tables, a pencil hand that belongs to no one adds 4 marks and a 5th cross through, tidy as accounting learned from water. The page smudges to graphite. The margin warms in a circle exact as a mug. The window shows a faint chalk cross inside that by morning will show politely, on the outer pane too, as if glass wanted to participate. He listens to the beach teach manners. Shoes off, voices down, lights away. A dog runs where foam folds and leaves a sock of fire for every bound. At the rock where the bay curves in, dark water gathers itself and shows a shoulder of blue that holds for 3 breaths. Pauses, then 1, as if learning the bell it cannot hear. Farther out, a boat's wake braids a long sentence no one tries to read all at once because sentences are for later, and this is for standing still. He steps into the pebbles and lets his foot learn a letter. The cove writes it in light and erases without offense. Children make halos with their hands and crown themselves gently. A plastic pail dipped and lifted becomes a lantern that pretends to leak stars. The parent tilts the pail, and the glow climbs the rim like a creature deciding, then lays down again like obedience. Nobody calls to the far shore. Calling breaks the grammar of small brightness. He notes how instruments try and fail to own a summer. A phone lifts to record. The screen lies in gray. The lens steals a smear and calls it proof. In the clipped video, a thumbnail wears a small graphite tally that no software admits. 4 marks and a 5th crossed through, drawn where pixels should be enough. The thumb that swiped comes away faintly gray, the way thumbs do when they have been telling the truth. He watches a boy at the jetty throw a flat stone. It kisses water 4 times, pauses, then once more, and each kiss blooms blue like the word yes answered by a mirror. On the jetty's face, the wet prints hold their edges longer than they should, 4 together, a 5th turned slightly inward, because people turn when they choose. A lantern somewhere upriver tests 3 notes, pauses, 1, buoy or bell or barge, and the cove leans brighter for a breath as if reminded of something old. He ends the watch with a rule that traveled here from fields and porches and learned to speak water. Light before fear. Don't wade past your kindness. Don't name what doesn't need a name. He sets a smooth shell on the piling turned slightly inward, the way a foot waits at a threshold. The glow below accepts the gift by making nothing of it. That is how generous places behave. The harbor master closes the book. The page keeps a ring of warmth, and then forgets on purpose. 3 soft ripples touch the shore, a pause, and 1, and the tide, which is older than stories, counts back without being asked. He carries the glow north to air that crackles without sound. Snow holds its own moonlight. Breath hangs as a patient animal. A field hut keeps watch near a frozen lake. Plywood, tin roof, a door that decides when it will groan. Above the tree line, a low green seam appears, thin as the edge of a blade, and then folds itself into a long curtain that forgets about horizons. He keeps his voice even where folklore and field notes share a cup. Charged particles travel lines no road has named. Oxygen sings green. Nitrogen learns pink at the hem. The sky writes slowly and then all at once, as if remembering the verb it wanted. No one whistles. Older mouths say that calls a wind you cannot bargain with. Headlamps are cupped, not waved. Light before fear. The night means you no harm if you don't teach it your panic. He sets a palm on the hut rail. Wood that has minded winters warms under the hand in a perfect ring, exact as a mug, and keeps the heat for a measured breath after he lifts it, as if timber had practiced remembering. Inside the window, a print waits where someone steadying a thermos left their pause. 5 ridges, a breath. 1 ridge just a little longer. On the outer frost, a faint twin blooms by itself, as if cold learned a polite crossing. He opens the observer's log. Paper gritty from gloves, pencil easier than ink in air that makes pens sulk. 2107, first arc. 2118, band brightens. Between neat times, a hand no one will sign for has added 4 small marks and a 5th crossed through, tidy as accounting done by sky. The page smudges graphite into the thumb that turns it. Under that thumb, the paper warms in a circle the size of a candle plate and cools as if logs prefer not to show off. He listens to instruments speak their own weather. The magnetometer in the shed ticks a private metronome. The all-sky camera begins its slow, patient flowers. A radio, meant for storms, wakes to a thin, borrowed rhythm. 3 pulses, a pause, 1. Quiet as a wire plucked behind snow. The tech writes interference and gives the antenna a polite tap. The pattern migrates to the LED on the recorder for 2 cycles, and returns to ordinary like a child reminded to sit up. He walks the lake the way people do when they are just big enough to belong here. Footprints hold their edges longer than they deserve. 4 together, a 5th turned slightly inward at the place where the ice is confident. The curtain overhead twists into a coronet. A wheel spoke pointed straight down. The whole sky leans for 3 slow breaths. Pauses, then 1, giving the field hut the same lesson bells gave posts and doors elsewhere. He lifts his eyes at the first hush from the group. There is always a hush. The green brightens into rungs. The rungs climb. The hem grows a pink, the color of a mouth that means to speak and thinks better of it. No one claps. Someone, not wanting to waste the silence, counts under a scarf. Counting is older than fear. He steps back into the hut where power sulks and behaves. The clock over the workbench blinks 9:12 and, just for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once before deciding which minute belongs to which light. On the inside of the door, a chalk cross drawn years ago at knee height, Private Courage, shows by morning faintly on the outer panel too, as if fur learned to speak both directions under rhyme. The kettle gives 3 small clicks, pauses, 1, and discovers itself boiling. He notes how cameras misunderstand wonder. The motion algorithm tags the frozen lake, person, no face, confidence not available, and files clips of nothing but brightness learning a new verb. In the thumbnail, a thin graphite tally appears on the progress bar itself, 4, a 5th cross through, as if Pixels had decided there was a ledger to keep. The glove that swipes away comes up faintly gray. He ends the watch as the curtain thins the way generosity thins, without apology. Stars step forward like understudies and remember their lines. On the stoop, he leaves a wrapped sweet turned slightly inward because treaties like to travel. The snow accepts it by not swallowing it whole. From the dark line of spruce, a small sound arrives that the radio will pretend it did not teach. 3 gentle touches, a pause, 1. He cups his headlamp and lets it lean like a listener before straightening, obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the sky, which needs no door, pretends it did not just learn how to knock. He carries the glow to fence lines and ditch banks where grass lifts its shoulders to meet evening. The air smells like mint and dust. Barn swallows trade the shift to crickets. First 1 light, then 2. Single syllables in the weeds, brief and careful, like small agreements being tested. Old mouths called them lightning bugs. Field notes write Lampyridae, pulse intervals, species by rhythm. Both are true as long as nobody hurries. He keeps his voice even where wonder and counting share a cup. In some hollows, flashes stagger, here, there, here. So the eye must sweep to make a sentence. In a few valleys, the pulses catch one another and become a choir. Hundreds brighten together, wait, then brighten again, practicing a kind of courtesy that lives in timing. You don't chase them. You find a rail, cup your own lamp, and let the field audition its grammar. He sets his palm on a fence post worn by elbows. Wood warms in a perfect ring the size of a tea saucer and keeps the heat for a measured breath after he lifts it, as if timber had learned to remember light it cannot make. On the rail beneath, Dew accepts a print no hand left. 5 ridges. A pause. 1 ridge a little too long. Then decides to be water again because water is good at pretending. He opens a notebook already flavored with summer. First flash at 2034. Peak at 2107. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks and a 5th crossed through, neat as accounting learned from Twilight. Graphite smudges his thumb. The page under it warms as if paper wanted to be a lantern's plate, then cools obediently when he turns. He listens while the field tries a sentence on. 3 bright pulses along the fence. A pause. 1 more at the ditch. Thin as a wire plucked behind grass. The rhythm migrates down the hedgerow the way a roomer walks a street. Someone 2 gates over says synchronous under their breath and does not make it louder. The road beyond coughs a truck and then remembers not to intrude. He watches how the house at the edge pretends not to participate. A motion camera looks at the field and writes what it writes for most mysteries. Person, no face, confidence not available, and files a clip of nothing but vowels made of light. In the thumbnail, a small graphite tally appears on the progress bar itself. 4 marks, a 5th crossed through, as if Pixels had decided there was a ledger to keep. The finger that swipes comes up faintly gray and is comforted by a pocket. He steps to the gate, chalks a small cross low on the inside post because courage has habits, and by morning the mark will show faintly outside too, as if Oak practiced speaking both directions through dew. Chalk arrows from a neighbor's safe route note survive shoe and moisture as if written from inside the air. 3 point toward the bright corner of the pasture, a pause, One turns toward the hedged footpath where a creek keeps its own counsel. People choose the brighter way and pretend it was their idea. He notes the old fieldcraft that lives in pockets as readily as keys. A scrap of iron, not for magic, but for the mind. A jar brought and then not used because jars are traps, and this is a choir. A candle stub that stays unlit because the rule traveled here too. Light before fear, but your light last. He watches the pulses learn a paragraph. For a long minute, the hedge and the ditch speak together. 3, a pause. 1. Then the timing slides and the grammar becomes laughter again. Uncountable. Like creek water and stones. On the porch, a bowl waits on the threshold because treaties prefer consistency. When lifted, its ring of warmth is exact. When set down, a single wrapped sweet sits turned slightly inward, from no bag in the house. The camera doesn't see it happen. The field does. He ends the watch with mercy for small languages. He writes the hour, lets graphite leave a gray at the edge of his thumb, and closes the book as if putting a lid on gentle weather. From the far fence comes the learned knock. 3 soft touches, a pause. 1, hidden in cricket work and the soft battery of wings. He cups his lamp and lets it lean like a listener before straightening. Obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the field, brief, bright, generous, pretends it wasn't teaching words all along. He carries the glow to lanes that slope toward churchyards. Hedges high, ditches deep, milestones pale as knuckles. Mist collects where names do. Old mouths kept a category for lights that traveled alone. Small fires that kept to the cart track at night, never climbing a hedge, never crossing a gate the wrong way. They called them corpse candles and said they walked from house to lich gate before bodies knew to follow. He keeps his voice even. Air can trick, marsh can breathe, eyes can learn the wrong math. And still, on some nights, a slow flame appears at her door and tests the road like a cautious messenger. He notes the manners assigned to such lights, because roads impose etiquette the way rooms do. If the glow rides low, old mouths said a child would be carried. If high, a taller sorrow. You did not wave a lantern at it. You cupped yours and let it pass. Bells in the tower practice the soft count. 3, a pause. 1, and the moving flame leaned, remembering what posts and doors already knew. He sets a palm on a gatepost that has minded weather for 100 years. Oak warms in a perfect ring, exact as a mug, and holds the heat a breath after the hand lifts, as if timber had decided it could keep charge the way clouds keep weather. On the outside face of the gate, a chalk cross drawn small and low inside the yard shows faintly by morning, as if wood had practiced speaking to the lane as well. He opens the sexton's book on a shelf that tastes of dust and oil. Lights reported along the lower road. A neat hand wrote once, "No one to blame." Between tidy lines for interments and fees, a pencil that belongs to no one here has added 4 small marks, and a 5th crossed through, tidy as accounting that checks its own work. Graphite smudges to the thumb and warms the paper beneath in a circle the size of a candle plate, before remembering it is paper again. He listens to the sound roads make when they mean to be good. Gravel answers boots. Ditchwater keeps secrets like a professional. From the far bend, a rhythm arrives thin as a wire plucked under hedgerow. 3 soft touches, a pause. 1. No cart shows. No person breathes the cold, white breath of bodies. Yet along the ditch, a narrow brightness keeps to the low places, patient as a child's step, remembering to lift. He watches how the village pretends not to watch. Curtains stay mostly still. A woman holds her lamp by the chimney breast and sees, in the glass that remembers heat, a print bloom on the outer pane to mirror the one inside where her cup was steadied. 5 ridges, a pause. 1 ridge a breath too long. The wipe cloth warms and keeps the shape 1 sentence more than cloth should. He follows the flame in the way people do when they know better, a pace behind, not paired. It pauses at a stile, waits as if for hands that aren't present, and then floats the height of a shoulder over the rails. as if remembering without gravity. At the lane's lowest place, the light thins, brightens, and chooses the way to the gate everyone chooses on living feet. Rules are rules. Even stories keep them. He steps into the yard, while bells change their manners for the hour. Stones wear lichen like tidy coats. The moving flame he did not see from closer than caution reaches the gate and stands the way a bearer stands, not blocking, not entering, simply being where the measure changes. The Lichgate roof gathers the warmth and lets it go again politely. In the log for oil and wick, a faint tally appears along the margin, 4, a fifth cross through, drawn where no candle should have opinions. He walks the path to the porch, bowl in hand because treaties travel of their own accord. He sets a single wrapped sweet on the threshold, turned slightly inward the way a foot turns when it remembers to ask first. The stone warms in a ring under his palm and cools as if stone had agreed to be human for a breath. The camera in the gutter, new and generous, labels the dark nothing it can see person. No face, confidence not available, and files the clip where ledgers keep their polite secrets. He ends the watch with work that respects thresholds, lamp low, latch kept, names said not to wake, only to acknowledge. Behind him, in the lane, the soft count repeats itself with old patience. 3, a pause, 1, and the little flame, which is and isn't a flame, lets the road take custody of it until the living need the way again. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the path, which knows how to carry, pretends it didn't learn a new traveler tonight. He carries the glow into timber where paths are guesses, and the canopy edits the sky. Wind braids itself through fir and oak. The floor smells like wet bark and old books. A blowdown lies ribbed open, sapwood gone to velvet. In the seam where rot works patiently, a pale green begins, cold as mint, steady as breath under a quilt. Old mouths called it foxfire and let it do its work without hurrying it with names. He keeps his voice even where fieldcraft and wonder share a cup. Fungi make a light the way some creatures make an apology. Quiet, thorough, better at night. Mycelium runs like handwriting under skin. Damp wood becomes a lantern that has learned to whisper. Light before fear still applies. Headlamp hooded, steps counted, hand close to bark, but not on it. When a far farm bell wanders 3 notes, pauses, then 1, the green along the log lifts a little, the way a listener lifts a chin, and then returns to its patient sentence. He sets a palm on the cabin rail, where whoever watches this plot keeps coffee. Wood warms in a perfect ring, exact as a mug, and holds the heat a breath after his hand lifts, as if timber had practiced remembering light it cannot make. On the outer pane of the kitchen window, a print blooms to mirror the one inside where a cup was steadied. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge just a breath too long. The wipe cloth takes it and stays warm 1 sentence more than cloth should. He opens the naturalist's notebook on the table, pages salted with pressed leaves and pencil. 22 went 14, dim green at burl seam. 22:19, brighter at knot, neat times, small arrows. Between lines, a hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks and a 5th cross through, tidy as accounting learned from undergrowth. Graphite smudges to his thumb. Paper under it warms in a circle the size of a candle plate and cools obediently when he turns the page. He listens while the forest teaches its own percussion. Drips count from a snag, 3 drops, a pause, 1, thin as a wire plucked in moss. A barred owl edits the rhythm on principle and then lets it be. The trail cam on the maple trunk wakes politely. Motion. The clip is only a log breathing green and ferns agreeing with it. The camera writes what cameras write when they are out of nouns. Person, no face, confidence not available, and files the glow like a visitor who asked for no attention. He walks to the blowdown the way people do when they remember to be guests. The green chooses the seam and refuses the bark, as if it respected boundaries. At one notch, the brightness gathers around the shape of a hand he did not make. 5 ridges, a pause, one ridge longer than a glove should allow, and then loosens back into its grammar. On the underside of a lifted slab, a chalk cross drawn small and low years ago by a bored ranger, Private Courage, shows faintly on the outside grain now, as if oak learned to speak both directions under rot. He notes the small camp rules that have always kept woods and people from arguing. A scrap of iron in a pocket, not for magic but for mind. A tea candle in a tin, unused, because this place already knows how to glow. A bowl carried from the porch because treaties prefer consistency. When he sets it on the mossed stump, turned slightly inward the way a foot pauses at a threshold, the wood beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts it, one wrapped sweet is gone without a wrapper to accuse, and the moss looks exactly as moss prefers to look. He watches the light learn manners. It brightens along a split, holds for 3 breaths, pauses, then 1, and continues as if rehearsing with a conductor nobody sees. A slug crosses the seam like a slow comet and is crowned momentarily. It declines comment. Far up trunk, a shelf fungus takes the glow like a borrowed scarf and sets it back, unwrinkled. The trail cam's status LED blinks 3 times, pauses once, electronics learning a forest's old joke and pretending it meant to. He steps back toward the cabin because distance helps stories keep their shape. Footprints in duff hold their edges longer than they deserve. 4 together, a 5th turned slightly inward at the sill where decisions are made. Inside, the clock over the sink blinks 9:12 and, for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once before remembering itself. He chalks a small cross low on the inside door. By morning, a faint twin will show outside, as if fur learned to reassure the yard. He ends the watch with work that counts as thanks. He logs the hour. Graphite leaves a gray at the thumb. The page holds a circle of warmth the size of a bowl and releases it without complaint. From the stump line, the learned knock returns, patient as weather, 3 soft touches, a pause, 1, hid in drips and twig settling. He cups his headlamp and lets it lean like a listener before straightening, obedient, light before fear. Set the plate, keep the latch. The counting continues and the log, which has time, pretends it wasn't teaching a lamp how to grow. He carries the glow to a pullout where scrub keeps its own counsel. Mesquite, creosote, wind that smells like coins. Heat leaves the road slowly. Sky keeps the last color for the horizon's sake. A low rail marks the edge. A state sign explains politely that strange lights have been reported here from time to time, that air layers and roads can trick eyes that want to be honest. An old mouth beside him says nothing, which is a better note to start on. He keeps his voice even where folklore and physics share a thermos. Temperature inversions bend headlights into sky. Distant ranch lamps climb air like stairs. Venus practices humility. And some nights, after the talk has exhausted itself and the map has run out of good ideas, 3 small fires appear above the flats, white and amber, sometimes red at the rim, standing where no tower stands, moving as if they remember a road no surveyor would admit. They part and rejoin. They pause as if listening. The rule travels well, light before fear. Hood your torch. Let the desert audition. He sets his palm on the guardrail where 1,000 elbows have asked the night questions. Metal warms under the hand in a perfect ring, exact as a canteen base, and keeps the heat a measured breath after he lifts it, as if steel practiced remembering. On the display case of the little kiosk, inside, someone once steadied a coffee. On the outer pane tonight, a faint twin blooms by itself. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge a breath too long. The wipe cloth warms and keeps the shape 1 sentence more than cloth should. He opens the guest ledger in the steel box chained to the rail. First light at 21:03, brightest at 21:17. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks and a 5th crossed through. Tidy as accounting learned from Horizon. Graphite smudges his thumb. The paper beneath warms in a circle the size of a tin cup, and cools with the courtesy of paper that knows it will outlive this page. He listens to the platform teach patience. Tripods click shyly. Someone's phone tries to make a sun and throws grain instead. The highway far off draws a neat procession of white and red, obedient to lanes and gravity. Above the flats, the first stray glows lift, hold for 3 breaths, pause, then 1, thin as a wire plucked behind glass. A ranger at the end of the rail murmurs, "Mirage kindly," because kindness is part of the uniform. The lights behave like something that understands the word without needing it. He watches how the crowd pretends not to count. A child whispers numbers under a blanket. A couple makes a game of picking which glow will choose which direction. A man with field glasses lowers them at the same places every visitor does, where the brain expects a tower, a ridge, a road, and finds none. The webcam on its pole wakes politely. Motion. It files what webcams file when they are out of nouns. Person no face, confidence not available, and posts a clip of nothing but distance practicing conjugation. He chalks a small cross low on the inside panel of the ranger kiosk, because courage has habits. By morning, the mark shows faintly outside, too, as if plywood learned to speak both directions through dust. 3 chalk arrows painted on the pavement by a public works hand point toward the safer edge of the pullout. A pause. One points down the service track toward the old fence where decisions are made. Shoes choose the bright direction and behave as if they invented it. He notes the little desert rights that make nothing out of trouble. Turn headlights off at the turnout mouth. Voices low after the first hush. A scrap of iron in a pocket, not for magic, but to keep the mind from doubling back on itself. He sets a small bowl from the truck on the rail's flat, turned slightly inward the way a foot turns at a threshold. The steel beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts the bowl, one wrapped sweet is gone without a wrapper to accuse, and the night resumes pretending it has never learned treaties. He watches the lights decide to be generous. They lift together and move crosswise like companions walking a fence line. One separates, dims, returns, and the group tilts as if making room for an opinion. The pattern comes back over the flats. 3, a pause. 1, tucked inside cricket work and the thin battery of wind over yucca. A woman at the far end of the rail says a name, not a prayer, and gets an answer shaped like not being afraid. He ends the watch when the platform's murmurs fold back into wind. The sky takes one color away and gives another to the road. The ledger closes with the sound paper has when it knows it is being trusted. On the guardrail, the warm ring cools obediently. On the kiosk glass, the faint twin print fades to the kind of clean the desert approves of. From the flats, where maps pretend there is nothing to count, 3 small brightnesses show once more. Pause, and one stays a heartbeat longer than advice would recommend. He cups his torch, lets it lean like a listener, then straightens it, obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the desert, wide, older than guesses, pretends it did not just learn how to make an eye. He carries the glow to ridges that sleep with their fists clenched. Serpentine, limestone, faults braided like old rope. The air is metal before it is wind. A valley town closes shop early because shelves remember how to walk. On the high road, a turnout faces a cliff that has practiced falling. Somewhere under it, stress rehearses a word it doesn't want to say. He keeps his voice even where field notes and folklore share a thermos. Some nights before the ground decides, the sky remembers how to bruise. Pearly smears, low sheets of light with no storm to pay for them. Spears that climb from the slope as if the mountain exhaled lightning up instead of down. The notebooks call it earthquake lights and say rocks can learn a spark when squeezed cruelly enough. Older mouths called it ground fire and kept the lamp hooded. Light before fear. He sets his palm on the guardrail bolted into patience. Steel warms in a perfect ring, exact as a canteen, and keeps a measured breath of heat after he lifts it, as if metal had practiced remembering. On the truck's windshield, A print appears where no hand just steadied. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge a breath too long, and a faint twin blooms on the outer glass as if cold decided to be courteous and answer back. The wipe cloth keeps the warmth 1 sentence more than cloth should. He opens the station log at the little seismology shed, plywood, humming rack, paper that knows pencils better than pens. 2041, foreshocks felt. 2058, animal calls elevated. 2106, glow reported East Ridge. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks, and a 5th crossed through, tidy as accounting that knows what it cannot afford. Graphite smudges his thumb. The page under it warms in a circle the size of a mug, then chills as if logs prefer to be sober. He listens to instruments behave like choir kids. A broadband sensor ticks its unshowy truth. A magnetometer clears its throat. The outdoor camera writes what cameras write when nouns fail. Person, no face, confidence not available, for a clip of cliff and air. On the recorder's LED, 3 pulses, a pause. 1, step across politely, then surrender to the clock's ordinary blink like a child reminded to sit up. He walks the turnout line where shoes learn to count. Footprints in dust keep their edges longer than they deserve. 4 together, a 5th turned slightly inward at the crack where choices live. From the slope, a low glow elbows out of the rock face, quilts itself along a seam, blue-white like a patient stove, then loosens and rises a hand's breadth. No thunder, no smell of rain. The cliff seems to breathe through stone teeth. He notes the rights that make big places tolerate small people. Headlamps cupped, not waved. Voices down. A scrap of iron in a pocket, not for magic, but to keep the mind from running. He chalks a small cross low on the inside of the shed's door, private courage, and by morning the mark will show faintly outside too, as if plywood learned to speak both directions through dust. On the bench, a bowl from the truck sits, turned slightly inward, the way a foot stalls at a threshold. The plank beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts the bowl, 1 wrapped sweet has gone without a wrapper to accuse, and the plank looks exactly how planks like to look. He looks up when the ridge chooses grammar. 3 bright lifts along the fault, a pause, 1 taller, thin as a wire plucked inside granite. The sheep in a far paddock hush as if an old teacher had walked in. A dog decides to lie down and does not explain. The clock over the rack blinks 9:12 and, for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once before remembering itself. He writes bulb, because writing something helps. He steps to the fence where old survey tags dangle. A tag labeled 913 turns soft on its nail and then grows obedient again. The metal warms under his fingers in a circle the size of a candy bowl, cools, and leaves a smell like rain that did not fall. On the cliff face, dust takes a print where no glove pressed. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge longer than a hand should own. Then the next tremor sighs, and the print becomes slope again. He ends the watch when the valley decides to be brave. A small tremor walks the houses. Plates consider one another and choose to stay where they are. The ridge glow thins like patience fairly spent and threads back into rock. In the shed, the drum of the old paper seismograph scribbles a polite signature. Between wiggles, someone's pencil leaves 4 marks and crosses a 5th through as if to say we counted. From the dark slope comes the pattern that taught doors and bells and sirens and now stone. 3 gentle touches, a pause. 1, arriving without thunder. He cups his headlamp and lets it lean like a listener before straightening. Obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the fault, older than maps, tired of names, pretends it did not just learn how to make a flame. He carries the glow to a field that sleeps with its eyes open, windsock gone still, beacon turning a patient green-white, taxiway lights counting themselves into distance. The terminal is a glass whisper. The tower wears its headset like a crown that remembers storms. Frost takes the asphalt the way a ledger takes numbers, evenly, politely, ready to be convinced. He keeps his voice even where ritual and regulation share a thermos. Threshold lights make a mouth of green. Edge lights practice their careful white. Strobes at the approach end lift a dotted sentence out of night, so a stranger can read it at 120 knots. Light before fear. The runway is a promise written large enough that panic must choose to ignore it. He sets his palm on the railing of the tower steps. Steel warms in a perfect ring, exact as a mug, and keeps the heat a measured breath after he lifts it, as if metal had practiced remembering. Inside the glass, a print waits where someone steadying coffee left their pause. 5 ridges, a breath. One ridge just a little longer. On the outer pane, a faint twin blooms by itself, as if cold learned a polite crossing. The wipe cloth keeps the warmth 1 sentence more than cloth should. He opens the watch log. Winds calm, visibility honest. Runway 31 favored. 2106. Pilot-controlled lighting keyed. 2112. Practice approach reported. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks, and a 5th crossed through, tidy as accounting done by Horizon. Graphite smudges his thumb. The page under it warms in a circle the size of a candy bowl and cools obediently when he turns. He listens to the radio's keep manners. Clearance breathes abbreviations. Ground speaks in lines and turns. Tower says, cleared to land like a benediction. Out on the lonely frequency, a trainer over the lake clicks the mic. Once, twice, 3 times, to wake the field. A pause. Then 1 extra click the book did not ask for. The runway lights answer by brightening a notch as if they recognized an older pattern hiding inside the newer one. He walks the catwalk while approach lights rehearse. The sequenced strobes step in from the dark like polite knocks, far to near, until the fence stops being fence and becomes invitation. At the foot of the tower stair, frost prints hold longer than they deserve. 4 together, a 5th turned slightly inward at the riser where choices live. On the service door, a small chalk cross drawn low on the inside. Private courage. Shows by morning faintly on the outside too, as if aluminum learned to speak both directions through cold. He notes the little rights that keep big places from arguing with small bodies. Headlamps cupped on the ramp, not waved. Voices down on the common. A scrap of iron in a pocket, not for magic, but to keep the mind from running circles. In the break room, a bowl sits on the sill turned slightly inward the way a foot stalls at a threshold. The laminate beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts the bowl, 1 wrapped sweet has gone without a wrapper to accuse, and the sill looks exactly how sills prefer to look. He looks out when the practice traffic calls the final. The poppy boxes at the runway shoulder give their quiet arithmetic. Too high, too low, just right. Sky translating itself into red and white because nerves need nouns. The beacon on the hill tilts its green-white with old patience, then, just once, hums 3 breaths, pauses, then 1, thin as a wire plucked behind glass. The clock on the console blinks 9:12 and, for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once before remembering itself. He writes bulb because writing something helps. He steps down to the edge where asphalt becomes grass. From the fence, a security camera wakes politely and files what cameras file when they are out of nouns. Person, no face, confidence not available, for a clip of runway and stars. In the thumbnail, a thin graphite tally appears on the progress bar itself. 4 marks, a 5th crossed through, as if pixels had decided there was a ledger to keep. The finger that swipes comes away faintly gray and is comforted by a pocket. He watches the landing the way houses watch weather. Wheels kiss the numbers 4 times, pause, once more. The softest arithmetic a runway knows. The strobes breathe down to quiet. The edge lights keep their sentence for the taxi home. On the catwalk, a mask from last year's crew party hangs from a hook. The empty hook beside it looks used. Paint faintly warm, circle clean in dust higher than a comfortable reach. Nobody laughs loudly. Loud is for daylight. He ends the watch with work that looks like reverence and is. Lights to low. Log to saved. The bowl recenters itself on the sill as if nudged by a knee. From beyond the threshold, along the black ribbon that knows which way is home, the old pattern returns with airport manners. 3 soft pulses, a pause, 1. Arriving without need of tower or code. He cups his flashlight and lets it lean like a listener before straightening. Obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the runway, measured, certified, unafraid, pretends it did not just learn how to be a door. He carries the glow to banks that keep their voices low. Willow, rope, stone polished by years of careful feet. Volunteers fold paper into mild houses, 4 walls, a roof that breathes. Some hold candles that know their manners. Some carry little diodes that imitate patience. On each lantern, a few letters. The living writing for the gone, or for the hoped, or for the practice of gratitude itself. A rope runs along the slow water to remind the young that rivers have memories and should be treated as elders. Light before fear. He keeps his voice even while ceremony and current share a cup. Lanterns are set in a quiet order, north bank to south, upstream to down, so the water can read without tripping over itself. A bell from the bridge tower counts with courtesy. 3 notes, a pause, then 1. The first lantern inclines, as if it heard, and then straightens, obedient, the way a child sits up when a story reaches the good part. He lays a palm on the bridge rail where elbows have practiced patience. Steel warms in a perfect ring, exact as a tea mug, and keeps the heat a measured breath after he lifts it, as if metal had learned to remember. In the keeper's hut window, a print waits where someone studying a list left its pause. 5 ridges, a breath, 1 ridge a little longer. On the outer pane, a faint twin blooms by itself, as if night air learned a polite crossing. The wipe cloth keeps the warmth 1 sentence more than cloth should. He opens the ledger on the trestle table where names are copied before the light takes them. 2058, first launch. 2106, when slack. 2112, bell counted. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks, and a 5th crossed through. Tidy as accounting learned from water. Graphite smudges his thumb. The page under it warms in a circle the size of a candle plate, and then cools like paper proud to be useful. He listens while the river tries grammar. 3 small lanterns gather in a slow eddy. Pause. 1 slips its tether and joins them, thin as a wire plucked under moon. A child on the stairs whispers numbers without being told to count. The municipal camera on the lamppost wakes politely and files what cameras file when they are out of nouns. Person, no face, confidence not available, for a clip of light teaching water to speak softly. He chalks a small cross low on the inside post of the landing, because courage has habits. By morning, the mark will show faintly on the outside too, as if wood learned to speak both directions through mist. Stencils on the steps point the safer path. 3 arrows down toward the wide stair. Pause, 1 toward a narrow pier where decisions are made. Shoes choose the bright stair and behave as if they invented it. He notes the small rites that keep offerings honest. No lantern leaves without a name or a thanks. No flame leaves without a minder and a bucket. A bowl sits on the first tread, turned slightly inward the way a foot stalls at a threshold. Sweets for hands that carried, coins for string, a twig of rosemary because someone's grandmother insisted. The stone beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts the bowl to add a coin, 1 wrapped sweet is gone without a wrapper to accuse, and the tread looks exactly how stone prefers to look. He watches how the current becomes a procession. A lantern bumps a root and learns how to forgive it. Another catches a twig and is freed by the sleeve of a stranger, polite as a host at a doorway. A third turns its roof to the bell's rhythm, bright for 3 breaths, pause, bright for 1, and continues as if rehearsed. Far downstream, a raft of lights leans toward the left bank the way a choir leans toward a note that agrees with most throats. He steps onto the lower landing, where footprints keep their edges longer than they deserve. 4 together, a 5th turned slightly inward at the riser where choices live. On the pier, a wire basket of bamboo poles sits with its weight centered as if nudged by a knee. The river takes a breath and sets it back down in the same place, trusting the work to be done. He returns to the keeper's hut when the last names reach water. The clock over the clipboard blinks 9:12 and, just for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once before remembering itself. In the ledger's margin, the tidy tally appears again where no hand claims it. 4, a 5th crossed through, as if the pencil had decided to keep score on everyone's behalf. Outside, the bell is done for the hour. Inside, the kettle answers with 3 clicks, a pause, 1, and discovers itself boiling. He ends the watch with work that looks like reverence, and is. He centers the bowl on the step. The ring of warmth knows where to be. He folds a spare lantern and writes no name on it, because not all wishes are verbs. He sets it on the water and lets the river decide. From the bridge's shadow, the old pattern returns with river manners. 3 soft ripples, a pause. 1, arriving without urgency or claim. He cups his lamp and lets it lean like a listener before straightening. Obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the river, patient, practiced, unafraid, pretends it did not just learn a new way to carry names. He carries the glow into weather that has already claimed the furniture. Thunder counting sentences somewhere off stage, rain working the eaves like a diligent clerk. The house keeps its own grammar. Kettle patient, dog under the table, windows deciding how loud to be. In the low pause between one gust and the next, a round brightness appears at the edge of the porch roof. Pearl-sized, then fist, then a little bigger than that, hanging the way a thought hangs when it means to finish itself. He keeps his voice even where lab notes and kitchen stories share a cup. Call it ball lightning and let it keep its manners. Plasmas that forget where to go. Charge tangled in air like yarn. Weather trying a shape as old as a bead. It moves as if downhill through nothing. Along the drip edge, over the rail, not hurried, not shy. 3 slow pulses. Pause. 1. The way storms sometimes practice courtesy. Light before fear. Hood the house lamps. Count. Do not invite and do not chase. He sets his palm on the sill because wood tells the truth it can. The grain warms in a perfect ring, exact as a mug, and keeps the heat a measured breath after he lifts it, as if timber had practiced remembering light it cannot make. On the outer pane, a faint print blooms to mirror the one inside where a cup was steadied earlier. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge a hair too long. The wipe cloth keeps the warmth 1 sentence longer than cloth should, and then remembers the profession of cotton. He opens the storm log on the kitchen counter where dates sit beside barometer numbers and neighbors' remarks. 20:57, first rumble. 21:09, power blinked. 21:12, round light at eve. Between neat lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks and a 5th crossed through. Tidy as accounting done by weather. Graphite smudges his thumb. The page under it warms in a circle the size of a candle plate and cools obediently when the next line is written. He listens while the house chooses which wires to forgive. The refrigerator coughs and apologizes. The UPS under the desk beeps a single note and settles. On the mantel, a battery lantern leans its beam like a listener and then stands up straight. The doorbell, unhelped, answers the thunder with 3 soft clicks. Pause. 1, as if remembering a class it took from bells at another address. He watches the sphere behave. It drifts under the porch awning as if ceilings were suggestions. It regards the screen door without touching, then chooses the old chimney seam instead, slipping along brick like a polite animal that prefers the edges of rooms. When it stalls near the window frame, it dims and brightens as though breathing. 3, pause, 1. and the dog under the table sighs with the long-suffering grace of creatures who have decided to trust furniture. He notes the little rites that make houses in storms remain friends. A scrap of iron in a pocket, not for magic, but for mind. A small chalk cross low on the inside panel, private courage, and by morning a faint twin shows outside too, as if paint learned to speak both directions through damp. On the threshold, a bowl sits turned slightly inward the way a foot pauses at a door. The wood beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts the bowl, one wrapped sweet has gone without a wrapper to accuse, and the step looks exactly how steps prefer to look. He checks the porch camera because curiosity is also a kind of respect. The clip is nothing but rain, learning its scales, and a pale sphere reconsidering corners. The software writes what software writes when nouns fail: person, no face, confidence not available, and posts a thumbnail where a small graphite tally sits on the progress bar itself. 4 marks, a 5th crossed through, as if Pixels had decided there was a ledger to keep. The finger that swipes away comes up faintly gray and is comforted by a pocket. He looks up when the storm negotiates. Thunder lays out its reasons one hill at a time. The rain takes 2 steps back and 1 forward. The sphere chooses the downspout for a last, gentle descent. At the elbow, it thins like a breath in winter, pauses, and then is not there. Not burst exactly. Not gone with drama. Just folded. The way a light folds when it has said its piece and would rather not be applauded. He ends the watch with work that looks like reverence and is. Lights to ordinary. Kettle on for the kind of tea that blesses decisions. The clock above the stove blinks 9:12 and, just for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once before remembering itself. He writes the hour, lets graphite leave a gray at the thumb, and closes the book as if putting a lid on helpful weather. From the porch comes the pattern storms and bells, and doors have taught each other. 3 gentle touches, a pause, 1, arriving through wood that knows how to accept company. He cups his flashlight and lets it lean like a listener before straightening, obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate, keep the latch. The counting continues, and the storm, older than maps, courteous when asked correctly, pretends it did not just learn how to visit. He carries the glow into air that has turned to glass. The city is quiet enough to hear its own coat sleeves. Cold lays a sheet over everything that can hold still. The river smokes as if thinking. Street lamps build small rooms of gold on the snow. And then something remembers an older architecture. Columns rise straight up from every bulb. Tall, patient, not in a hurry to be sky. They look like doors you can only walk through if you have learned how to stand. He keeps his voice even where optics and rumor share a scarf. Flat ice crystals drift like cards, orienting as if tired of all the other shapes they could be. Lamplight climbs those mirrors and forgets to stop. Sodium, amber, LED, clean white, a doorway above each post that needs no hinges. People call them light pillars, as polite a name as any. Light before fear. Hood your headlamp. Let the air have its small cathedral. He sets his palm on the iron of the footbridge rail. Metal warms under the hand in a perfect ring, exact as a mug, and keeps the heat a measured breath after he lifts it, as if steel had practiced remembering. In the booth window of the park warden, a print waits inside where someone steadying a thermos left their pause. 5 ridges, a breath, 1 ridge a little longer, and on the outer pane, a faint twin blooms by itself, as if cold learned a polite crossing. The wipe cloth keeps the warmth 1 sentence longer than cloth should, and then decides to be clean. He opens the incident log they keep for weather that pretends to be company. 2054, pillars seen west bank. 2106, visibility good. 2112, arches bright. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks, and a 5th crossed through, tidy as accounting done by frost. Graphite smudges his thumb. The page beneath warms in a circle the size of a candle plate and cools obediently, as if paper had manners to keep. He listens while the city learns to whisper. A bus kneels at a stop with more courtesy than usual. The river ice ticks like a clock with gloves on. Far down the embankment, a pedestrian crossing signal blinks in rhythm for no one. 3 soft pulses. Pause. 1, thin as a wire plucked behind glass. Above it, a pillar climbs from the beacon and cranes slightly, like a listener, before straightening, obedient. He walks the promenade where footprints hold their edges longer than they deserve. 4 together. A 5th turned slightly inward at the place where the path decides who goes to the river and who doesn't. Every lamp wears a column. Some columns are groomed and spare, some fray into velvet where the wind practices indecision. Across the water, a church announces itself in pale ladders of light. Each bell note lands in the cold and stacks like bricks you can breathe through. He notes the small rites that keep bodies and air on speaking terms. Breath through wool, not bravado. Voices down, because pillars fall apart when shouted at. A scrap of iron in a pocket, not for magic, but to keep the mind from doubling back on itself. On the inside of the warden's door, he chalks a small cross low, private courage, and by morning a faint twin shows outside too, as if plywood learned to speak both directions through rhyme. He sets a bowl from the booth on the stone parapet, turned slightly inward the way a foot waits at a threshold. The granite beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts the bowl to add a wrapped sweet, one is missing without a wrapper to accuse, and the stone looks exactly how stone prefers to look. The municipal camera on the lamppost wakes politely and files what cameras file when they are out of nouns. Person, no face, confidence not available, for a clip of pillars rehearsing the grammar of being tall. He watches the air become a choir. 3 lampposts along the boulevard send their columns up together. Pause, and one more climbs late, as if remembering the cue. A passing car's headlamps paint moving doors that travel with it like respectful escorts. Above the rink, blades carve a soft arithmetic. 4 quick turns, a 5th inward. And the ice answers in blue the way ice does when pleased. The clock on the rink house blinks 9:12 and, for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once, before it remembers which minute belongs to which face. He steps to the river stairs where frost blooms in fern handwriting. On a tread, a shallow print appears where no glove pressed. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge slightly too long. Then decides to be frost again, because frost is good at pretending. Across the dark water, a stray pillar leans toward its neighbor as if asking to borrow sugar, and is forgiven without paperwork. He ends the watch with work that looks like reverence and is. He centers the bowl. The ring of warmth knows where to be. He writes the hour and lets graphite leave its gray at the edge of his thumb. The page keeps the heat a breath and releases it like a well-raised guest. From the far end of the boulevard, where pillars turn back into lamps and lamps into ordinary, the old pattern returns with winter manners. 3 gentle pulses, a pause. 1, arriving through air that has learned how to become a door. He cups his lamp and lets it lean like a listener before straightening, obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the cold, bright, practical, unafraid, pretends it did not just learn how to climb. He carries the glow underground where rivers keep their voices low. Limestone ribs, air cool as clean glass, the boat's nose nosing shadows politely. The guide's lamp is curtained. The oars know how to be very quiet. Above the black water, a frost of little stars gathers, blue-green, patient, as if the ceiling had remembered outside and decided to compete. Old mouths called them fairy lights. Field notes write larvae and silk and traps. Both are true as long as nobody breathes too loudly. He keeps his voice even where biology and ceremony share a cup. The small hunters hang from the roof on threads that shine like rain seen from inside night. Each light is a stomach's idea made polite. Be bright, invite, hold still. Brightness answers hunger. When the river brings midges, the ceiling thickens with stars. After eating, the lights dim to the courtesy of a whisper. Light before fear. Hood your torch. Let the cave audition. He sets his palm on the gunwale because timber tells the truth it can. Wood warms in a perfect ring, exact as a mug, and keeps the heat a measured breath after he lifts it, as if cedar had practiced remembering glows it cannot make. On the outer face of the viewing window cut into the boat's bow, a faint print blooms to mirror the one inside where a hand steadied a camera. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge a breath too long. The wipe cloth keeps the warmth 1 sentence more than cloth should, and then behaves. He opens the cave ledger in the little hut by the entrance, a book that smells of rope and coins and diligence. 1952, flow low. 2041, first shimmer. 2112, constellation thick. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks, and a 5th cross through, tidy as accounting learned from dripstone. Graphite smudges his thumb. The page beneath warms in a circle the size of a candle plate and cools obediently when he turns. He listens while the cave chooses grammar. Drips count out of darkness. 3 notes. Pause. 1. Thin as a wire plucked inside stone. The guide's oar feather kisses current. The hull's little knocks return from under the world, practiced as a bell in another language. Up on the ceiling, the lights brighten for 3 breaths. Pause, then 1, as if rehearsing with the river's metronome. A bat disapproves softly and forgives them all. He watches how cameras misunderstand wonder. A tourist lifts a phone and catches only noise. Another tries time-lapse and steals a smear. The municipal sign on the jetty asks for darkness like a favor. The security dome at the tunnel mouth wakes politely and files what cameras file when they are out of nouns. Person, no face. Confidence not available. For a clip in which the only person is the ceiling behaving like weather. He chalks a small cross low on the inside plank of the dock because courage has habits. By morning, the mark will show faintly outside too, as if wood learned to speak both directions through damp. Stencils on the platform give the safe plan. 3 arrows toward the wider steps. Pause. 1 toward the narrow ledge where decisions are made. Shoes choose the brighter way and pretend that was their idea. He notes the little rights that keep caves and people from arguing. Voices become weather only after the bend. Light is a courtesy, not a right. In the hut, a bowl sits on the counter turned slightly inward the way a foot stalls at a threshold. Sweets for the long wait and the short walk. The wood beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts the bowl to add a coin, 1 wrapped sweet is missing without a wrapper to accuse, and the counter looks exactly how counters prefer to look. He looks up when the ceiling decides to be generous. Threads glitter like dew where no sun ever interviewed water. A single bright wanders, not moving but convincing the eye it did. 3 clusters thicken over the blackest pool. Pause. 1 blooms late like a student who found the problem at the bell. In the water's skin, their cities reflect and double. The boat rockers pretend not to count. Counting is for the one whose job it is to steer. He steps to a landing where footprints in silt hold edges longer than they deserve. 4 together. A 5th turned slightly inward at the riser where the handrail starts. A glove print appears on a pillar where no glove touched. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge too long, and then returns to limestone respectfully when the next drop lands with the authority of patient limestone. The clock in the hut blinks 9:12 and, for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once, before remembering whose minute belongs to whom. He writes bulb because writing something helps. He ends the watch with work that looks like reverence and is. He centers the bowl on the counter. The ring of warmth knows where to be. He closes the ledger. The page keeps the heat a breath and releases it like a well-raised guest. The guide knots the bowline in 3 tucks, pause, 1, and lays it down as if the rope were listening. From the tunnel's mouth, where day waits politely, the old pattern returns with cave manners. 3 soft touches, a pause, 1. Arriving through water that has learned how to become a door. He cups his lamp and lets it lean like a listener before straightening, obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the ceiling, patient, practiced, unafraid, pretends it did not just invent a sky. He carries the glow to a night that minds its business, porch lamps trimmed, constellations on duty, frost writing the same sentence on every car. Then the sky remembers handwriting. A white-green stroke tears across from chimney to water tower, thick as a brush loaded with bright paint, shedding commas that decide to be sparks. The street inhales. Dogs forget their names. Someone's breath says "oh" at the right volume for worship. He keeps his voice even where astronomy and rumor share a thermos. A stony visitor strikes air and learns grammar at once. Ablation, fragmentation, persistence glow. If it flares 3 times, it is only teaching the eye to count. 3 bright breaks. Pause. 1, thin as a wire plucked behind the firmament. Light before fear. Hood porch lamps. Don't run the block for pieces. The night will tell you if anything asks to be found. He sets his palm on the mailbox lid because metal tells the truth it can. Steel warms under the hand in a perfect ring, exact as a mug, and keeps the heat a measured breath after he lifts it, as if the box had practiced remembering. On the outer pane of the front window, a faint print blooms to mirror the one inside where a cup was steadied earlier. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge a breath too long. The wipe cloth keeps the warmth 1 sentence more than cloth should, and then chooses clean. He opens the Little Meteor Society app on the kitchen counter where a paper log sits anyway, because paper is a companion. 2106, first report north. 2111, terminal flash. 2112, widely observed. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks and a 5th crossed through. Tidy as accounting learned from Sky. Graphite smudges his thumb. The page beneath warms in a circle the size of a candle plate and cools obediently when he turns. He listens while sound catches up to light. For a long count, there is only street and lungs, and the faint wheel noise of a bus deciding to be patient. Then the sky knocks from very far in. 1 long, bold boom, the kind of sound that rearranges cupboards in memory, and after it a set of polite afterstatements. 3 soft rolls, pause, 1, as if distant doors admitted they had heard. Somewhere, a wind chime decides not to argue. He watches cameras misunderstand wonder and love it anyway. Porch cams catch a white smear like chalk dragged across velvet. Dash cams draw a neat line that ends in a sudden punctuation as clean as a teacher's. The software writes what software writes when nouns fail. Person, no face, confidence not available. And files the clip with the confidence of a clerk who has decided to be helpful no matter what the form says. In the thumbnail, a small graphite tally sits on the progress bar itself. 4 marks, a 5th crossed through, as if Pixels had decided there was a ledger to keep. He chalks a small cross low on the inside panel of the door. Private courage. And by morning, a faint twin shows outside too, as if wood learned to speak both directions through cold. On the stoop, the bowl sits turned slightly inward the way a foot pauses at a threshold. The board beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts the bowl to add a sweet, one is missing without a wrapper to accuse, and the plank looks exactly how planks prefer to look. He steps into the yard where footprints keep their edges longer than they deserve. 4 together, a 5th turned slightly inward at the place where the fence says please. Up high, the train of the fireball lingers like smoke, a careful hand forgot to smudge. Pale thread that curls back on itself, remembering the wind it borrowed. Street by street, people point with the manners of children who have been gently taught how not to shout. Someone phones a neighbor just to be sure both saw the same sentence. He notes the rights that keep sky and porches from arguing. Names of constellations said softly, not to own, but to honor. Doors kept on the chain long enough for the eye to finish reading. A scrap of iron in a pocket. Not for magic, but for mind. He sets the notebook on the rail. The ring of warmth knows where to be. The pencil leaves gray at the thumb and refuses to be ashamed. He looks up when the last punctuation arrives. Far over the river, the persistent train thins to lace and then to rumor. The wind edits the script until it belongs to weather instead of stone. The clock above the stove blinks 9:12 and, just for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once before remembering which minute is which. The dog under the table stretches the way creatures do when something big has left politely. He ends the watch with work that looks like reverence and is. He writes the hour and the direction, northwest to east-southeast, bright as the color of a welder's memory, and closes the book as if putting a lid on hot metal. From the cul-de-sac, where every porch has decided to be quiet together, the old pattern returns with sky manners. 3 gentle touches, a pause, 1, arriving through air that learned to be a door for stone, and then to be itself again. He cups his flashlight and lets it lean like a listener before straightening, obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the meteor, brief, exact, unafraid, pretends it did not just write its name on the night. He carries the glow up where air thins into decision. Switchbacks, frost on heather, cairns that keep their promises whether or not anyone thanks them. Dawn holds just off stage. Cloud packs the valley like white wool in a chest. Above it, the ridge is a dry island with a single hut shouldering the wind. He sets his lamp low because mountains disdain bravado. Light before fear. He keeps his voice even where optics and folklore share a flask. Sometimes when the sun lifts behind a climber and throws light into a bank of fog below, a giant shadow steps out on the cloud. Arms long, legs longer, a slow guardian that repeats your smallest movements. Around it blooms a round rainbow, pale rings that look like a saint's idea of geometry. The old mouths on this ridge called it a Brocken specter. Field books say glory and angles of backscatter. Both are true if you remember not to shout at yourself. He lays a palm on the hut's rail because wood tells the truth it can. The grain warms in a perfect ring, exact as a mug, and keeps the heat a measured breath after he lifts it, as if timber had practiced remembering light it cannot make. On the hut window, a print waits inside where someone steadying a thermos left their pause. 5 ridges, a breath, 1 ridge a little longer. And on the outer pane, a faint twin blooms by itself, as if cold learned a polite crossing. The wipe cloth keeps the warmth 1 sentence more than cloth should, and then decides to be clean. He opens the summit log, the book chained to the shelf so Cloud can't carry it off. 0548, Cloud C. 0611, First Rim. 0612, Spectre Scene E. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks and a 5th crossed through, tidy as a counting done by horizon. Graphite smudges his thumb. The page beneath warms in a circle the size of a candle plate and cools obediently, proud to behave like paper in a place that eats pens. He listens while the mountain chooses grammar. Guy wires hum without music. The windbreak stones tick as they remember night heat leaving. From the fog bank below comes a hush shaped like numbers. 3 slow breaths. Pause. 1. Thin as a wire plucked inside wool. A raven says, "Consider in its own language," and then forgives the hour. He steps to the edge where the slope breaks to nothing soft. Feet find an old groove in the rock, the kind of groove that means many boots have rehearsed courtesy here. Footprints hold their edges longer than they deserve. 4 together, a 5th turned slightly inward at the spot where choices live. He raises a sleeve to scratch his neck. Far out on the cloud, his taller self lifts an arm the width of a barn and scratches a mountain's itch with a field's hand. Around the giant, the glory brightens into 3 rings. Pause. 1. Colors thin as breath. He lowers his arm. The guardian obeys like a child told to sit up. He notes the little rites that keep bodies and edges on speaking terms. Headlamps cupped, not waved. Voices down. Sound runs fast on a ridge. A scrap of iron in a pocket. Not for magic, but so the mind doesn't walk itself off the path. On the inside of the hut door, he chalks a small cross low, private courage, and by morning the mark shows faintly outside too, as if Fur learned to speak both directions through rhyme. He sets a bowl from the pack on the threshold stone, turned slightly inward the way a foot pauses at a door. The granite beneath warms in a neat ring. When he lifts the bowl to add a wrapped sweet, one has gone without a wrapper to accuse, and the stone looks exactly how stone prefers to look. The hut camera wakes politely and files what cameras file when they are out of nouns. Person. No face, confidence not available, for a clip in which the only person is a cloud learning to mirror a man. He checks the watch on the cabin shelf. The face blinks 9:12 and, just for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once before remembering whose minute belongs to whom. He writes bulb in the log because writing something helps. In the thumbnail, the app makes of the specter. A small graphite tally sits on the progress bar itself. 4 marks, a 5th crossed through, as if Pixels had decided there was a ledger to keep. He watches the mountain practice kindness. A second climber steps from the trail. Her giant leans toward his, and they overlap like old neighbors at a gate, colors doubling for a breath before the wind edits them back to single. A third figure appears, late, and the rings around it bloom in time with a bell from a valley church no one can see. 3 notes, pause, 1, and the fog bows the way a congregation bows at a part of the service everyone knows without being told. He walks the crest a dozen paces. His better self on the cloud walks with him, 1 stride to his 3, as if the mountain had converted him to a different scale and found him useful anyway. He stops. The specter stops. He sets his hand on the cairn. Far below, a shadow hand the size of weather rests on light. For a moment he feels the friendly vertigo of being measured by a ruler too large for a pocket and finds it decent. He returns to the hut because a story ends better when it closes the book it opened. The pencil leaves gray at the thumb. The page keeps its circle of warmth a breath longer than is strictly necessary and releases it with the manners paper learns in cold rooms. The wind outside arranges the guy wires into the old rhythm again. 3, pause, 1, and the fog, which is older than instruments, replies by thickening around the giant until both agree to pretend not to recognize each other. He ends the watch with work that looks like reverence and is. He centers the bowl on the threshold. The ring knows where to be. He lowers his lamp and lets it lean like a listener before straightening, obedient. He looks once more at the cloud door where his shape had walked and sees only wool teaching sunlight how to be patient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the mountain, practical, exact, unafraid, pretends it did not just learn his name and write it back to him in rings. He carries the glow to a slope that speaks in pumice and hush. Black sand, scoria like spilled bread crust, a cone that pretends to be asleep until breath gives it away. Tents crouch behind a berm where wind behaves. A plywood shack wears instruments like a modest crown. Far above, a column fattens, ash lifting on its own legs, steam making a tower out of weather. The air smells of hot stone and coins. Light before fear. He keeps his voice even where field notes and folklore share a canteen. Eruptions teach clouds bad habits fast. Ash grains scrape and trade charge. Ice joins where steam met cold, and the whole column becomes a storm without needing a front. Lightning stitches through it sideways, diagonals, inside out. Blue-white needles, fat orange veins, and the thunder arrives like furniture moving itself in the next room. Nobody shouts. Headlamps are cupped, not waved. The names are simple because the behavior is not. Volcanic lightning, dirty thunderstorm. Both are honest if the lamp stays low. He lays a palm on the steel rail that keeps feet from choosing a thoughtless view. Metal warms under the hand in a perfect ring, exact as a canteen base, and keeps a measured breath of heat after he lifts it, as if steel had practiced remembering. In the shack window, a print waits on the inside where someone steadying a thermos left their pause. 5 ridges, a breath, 1 ridge a little longer, and on the outer pane, a faint twin blooms by itself, as if cold dust learned a polite crossing. The white cloth keeps the warmth one sentence more than cloth should, and then goes back to being cloth. He opens the eruption log on the table that smells like sulfur and pencil. 2049, vent roar increased. 2057, ash column to 3 kilometers. 2112, first intracloud bolt. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks, and a 5th cross through. Tidy as accounting done by cinders. Graphite smudges his thumb. The page beneath warms in a circle the size of a mug and cools obediently, proud to keep paper manners in a room that forgot about ink. He listens while instruments negotiate. The infrasound drum speaks low grammar. The radio crackles like a jacket full of cats. A cheap weather sensor on the roof forgets dignity and chirps 3 times. Pause. 1. Thin as a wire plucked behind sheet metal. Out in the plume, a fat vein of light burns sideways and the ash answers with a sound like bread tearing for giants. He walks the berm where footprints keep their edges longer than they deserve. 4 together. A 5th turned slightly inward at the step where the slope asks for respect. Above, the lightning organizes into courtesy. 3 quick stitches through the lower cloud. Pause. 1 taller seam from base to cap, as if a hand practiced running the needle along the grain of the sky. The column brightens from its own lightning, and then remembers to be black again. A raven, wrong place and right voice, edits the air once and leaves. He notes the small rites that keep bodies and ash on speaking terms. Masks on, lamps shaded with tape, pockets heavier than fear, scrap of iron not for magic but for mind. On the inside panel of the shack door he chalks a small cross low, private courage, and by morning a faint twin shows outside too, as if plywood learned to speak both directions through dust. A bowl sits on the threshold turned slightly inward the way a foot pauses at a door. The plank beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts the bowl to add a wrapped sweet, one has gone without a wrapper to accuse, and the plank looks exactly the way planks prefer to look. He watches cameras misunderstand wonder and help anyway. The Ridge webcam catches a white fork against black wool. The station recorder writes what recorders write when nouns fail. Person, no face, confidence not available, for a clip of a mountain learning a spark. In the thumbnail, a small graphite tally appears on the progress bar. 4. A 5th crossed through, as if pixels had decided there was a ledger to keep. The finger that swipes comes away faintly gray and is comforted by a pocket. He looks up when the column chooses grammar again. 3 lateral bolts stitch the lower ash where it mushrooms. Pause. 1 climbs the throat like a rope thrown up a well. The shock follows with the old courtesy in its pockets. 1 bowl-deep thump, then 3 soft room-adjusting rolls. Pause. 1. Doors admitting they heard. The clock over the HV rack blinks 9:12 and, for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once before remembering which minute to be. He writes bulb because writing something helps the room behave. He steps to the boundary tape where a sign asks for obedience. Dust takes a glove print on the rope where no glove pressed. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge longer than a glove should allow, and then the next ash whisper settles it back into rope. Downslope a string of village windows stays dimmed by agreement, and still the light inside the plume lends them a pulse, as if thunder taught bricks to breathe. He ends the watch with work that looks like reverence and is. He centers the bowl. The ring of warmth knows where to be. He saves the log. The page keeps its heat a breath and releases it with manners. Up on the cone, a last seam of fire draws itself straight as a rule and fades like someone who has delivered a note and will not stay for the answer. From the rock face, through pumice and plywood, the old pattern returns with mountain manners. 3 gentle touches, a pause. 1. Arriving without hurry, like a courtesy learned in another century. He cups his headlamp and lets it lean like a listener before straightening. Obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the ash, impatient, exact, unafraid, pretends it did not just learn how to write lightning in the margins. He carries the glow into a street practicing welcome, swept steps, door frames dressed in color, rice flower patterns that teach the ground to smile. Clay lamps wait in shallow trays, wicks drink patiently. When dusk agrees, they bloom in rows along sills and rails, small suns that know how to stay put. Bells from a nearby shrine try 3 notes. Pause, 1. The line of lamps inclines, then straightens, obedient. Light before fear. He keeps his voice even where devotion and housekeeping share a bowl. A dia is a promise. Keep the oil honest, the wick trimmed, the doorway kind. Children carry flames from elders' hands, one steady to another, like news too important to raise a voice over. Firecrackers begin elsewhere. Here the lamps talk in quiet arithmetic. He sets his palm on a gatepost where chalk rangoli curls like handwriting. Wood warms in a perfect ring, exact as a cup, and keeps the heat a breath after the hand lifts, as if timber had practiced remembering light it cannot make. In the outer glass of the window, a faint print blooms to mirror the one inside where a cup was steadied. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge a breath too long. The wipe cloth keeps the warmth 1 sentence more than cloth should, and then behaves. He opens a neat ledger beside a tray of matchboxes, oil-topped, wicks counted, doors visited. 1958, first light. 2041, thresholds complete. 2112, lantern steady. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks and a 5th crossed through, tidy as accounting done by night. Graphite smudges his thumb, the page beneath warms in a circle the size of a candle plate and cools obediently when he turns it. He listens while houses teach manners to flame. A breeze tests the street. Lamps lean together like cousins at a photo and then remember posture. On one doorstep, a bowl waits turned slightly inward the way a foot pauses at a door. The stone beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts the bowl, 1 wrapped sweet is gone without a wrapper to accuse, and the step looks exactly how steps prefer to look. The porch cam writes what cams write when nouns fail: person, no face, confidence not available, and files a clip of nothing but patience. He chalks a small sign low on the inside panel, his old private courage, and by morning a faint twin shows outside too, as if wood learned to speak both directions through color. 3 chalk arrows painted earlier for small feet point toward the bright main stair, pause, 1 toward the side path where choices live. Shoes choose the bright and act as if they invented it. He watches how the line of lamps becomes a river. 3 flares brighten at once along a railing, pause, 1 at the corner wakes late but correct, like a student who found the lesson mid-sentence. A hand replaces an oil cup without scolding the wick. A neighbor sets a spare on a shared step because surplus is also etiquette. He ends the watch with work that looks like reverence and is. He centers the bowl. The ring of warmth knows where to be. The clock above the stove blinks 9:12 and, for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once before remembering itself. From the lane, the bells choose their learned rhythm. 3 soft notes. Pause, 1. Arriving through smoke that smells like rooms learning how to be kind. He cups his lamp and lets it lean like a listener before straightening. Obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the threshold, bright, patient, unafraid, pretends it did not just learn to carry a son. He carries the glow to a field permission made. Buckets, ropes, a water line chalked like a rule, volunteers with long arms and longer patience. Paper lanterns wait like folded houses. A bin of sand mines the unlit ones. A marshal says the words everyone already knows: no trees, no roofs, no wind past kind, and nods toward the staggered line that points away from town. Light before fear. He keeps his voice even where celebration and caution share a sleeve. A lantern wants only 2 things: heat enough to rise, hands enough to aim. Wishes written small on the paper behave better than wishes shouted. 3 groups cup their lanterns. A pause. One elder takes a later breath to count grandchildren twice. He sets his palm on the field rail where elbows have practiced hope. Metal warms in a perfect ring, exact as a canteen, and keeps the heat a measured breath after he lifts it, as if steel had practiced remembering. On the check-in tent's outer plastic, a faint print blooms to mirror the one inside where a pen was steadied. 5 ridges, a pause, one ridge a touch too long. The wipe cloth keeps the warmth one sentence more than cloth should, and then becomes plastic again. He opens the steward's clipboard. 2054, Win 3 Key Tier 2106, first row lit. 2112, release window. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks and a 5th crossed through. Tidy as accounting learned from air. Graphite smudges his thumb. The page beneath warms in a circle the size of a tin cup and cools obediently. He listens while the field learns grammar. Marshals count in a voice that belongs to rope. 1 to 3 for hands. Pause. 1 more for breath. On release, lanterns rise like polite ideas, not bolting, not dawdling, making a slow river that forgets the ground without insulting it. A drone camera posts what cameras post when nouns fail. Person. No face, confidence not available. For a clip of lights ascending like a sentence that does not need punctuation. He chalks a small cross low on the inside stake of the windsock. Private courage. And by morning a faint twin shows outside too, as if canvas learned to speak both directions through night. Stencils on the grass nudge feet. 3 arrows toward the clear corridor. Pause, 1 toward the water buckets. Shoes learn to agree. He notes the little rites that keep airborne wishes honest. A bucket for each launch team. A watcher who likes no enough to say it. A bowl at the edge table turned slightly inward, the way a foot waits at a threshold. The plank beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts the bowl to add a sweet, one has gone without a wrapper to accuse, and the plank looks as planks prefer. He watches the stream of lanterns tilt toward the cooler air aloft. 3 brighten together when a layer agrees. Pause. 1 climbs late and finds its company. A couple holds back theirs to keep it close, then lets go in the moment where holding would become worry. The wind edits the procession into lines as neat as writing on a school slate. He ends the watch with work that looks like reverence, and is. The final lantern is a spare with no name. He writes none on it because not all thoughts want verbs. It rises with field manners, joins the river, and becomes a star until stars are not needed. From the dark row of trees beyond the clear corridor, the old pattern returns with sky lantern grammar. 3 soft brightenings, a pause, 1, arriving through air that remembers fire and forgives it. He cups his headlamp and lets it lean like a listener before straightening, obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the wind, brief, exact, unafraid, pretends it did not just learn to carry wishes. He carries the glow into a night the grid forgot. Elevators finish their sentences and hold still. Refrigerators admit their hum was a kind of weather. Windows open to a sky that has not been allowed to be itself. On the boulevard, people come outside the way a neighborhood does when it remembers porches. He keeps his voice even where emergency and luxury share a bench. Candles near curtains are uninvited. Battery lamps, not moods. A neighbor drags a barbecue into the open and learns 20 names he only waved at last week. Someone with a telescope becomes a mayor. The Milky Way lays its chalk line from billboard to billboard, and no one argues. He sets his palm on the stoop rail. Iron warms in a perfect ring, exact as a mug, and keeps the heat a measured breath after he lifts it, as if metal had practiced remembering. On the outer pane of the lobby door, a faint print blooms to mirror the one inside where a hand steadied a list. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge a touch too long. The wipe cloth keeps the warmth 1 sentence more than cloth should, and then returns to ordinary. He opens a paper notebook because phones are busy being torches. 2058, power down. 2106, first stars noticed. 2112, band visible. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks and a 5th crossed through, tidy as accounting learned from awe. Graphite smudges his thumb. The page beneath warms in a circle the size of a candle plate and cools obediently. He listens while the city's noises choose new uniforms. The UPS in a shop doorway beeps a single syllable, and then remembers silence. From the substation yard, metal clicks in a learned phrase. 3, pause, 1. As if relays practiced courtesy after all. Far above, satellites walk a slow parade. Someone lifts a child and says a real name for a bright. Someone else says a wrong one softly and is forgiven. He chalks a small cross low on the inside of his door, private courage, and by morning a faint twin shows outside too, as if paint learned to speak both directions through cool air. Chalk arrows drawn by public works long ago point to a muster point, 3 toward the bright schoolyard, pause, 1 toward the dimmer church lot where decisions are kinder. He notes the little rites that keep blackouts from being stories people tell with a shiver. Grill shared, batteries rationed, strangers named. A bowl sits on the stoop turned slightly inward the way a foot pauses at a threshold. The board beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts the bowl to add a wrapped sweet, one has gone without a wrapper to accuse, and the stoop looks as stoops prefer. He looks up when the first gasp moves along the block. The triangle of summer, Deneb, Vega, Altair, reappears like a song older than the radio. The band brightens for 3 breaths, pause, brightens for 1 more as the last billboard loses patience and goes quiet. The clock above the stove blinks 9:12 and, just for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once before choosing. He writes bulb because writing something helps. He ends the watch with work that looks like reverence and is. Candles hooded, doors mostly shut, voices soft. From the cul-de-sac where porch chairs have migrated, the old pattern returns with city manners. 3 gentle touches, a pause, 1. Arriving through air that has learned to be a ceiling again. He cups his lamp and lets it lean like a listener before straightening, obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the blackout, brief, exact, unafraid, pretends it did not just teach names back to mouths. He carries the glow to a field edge where app icons gather in pockets like modern saints. A line of lawn chairs points west. Someone's thermos becomes a centerpiece. The sky is primed for a parade. First one bright, then another, then a dozen, walking a curve with factory posture. Old mouths have new words: train, deployment, occultation. And older mouths say iridium and remember flares like small apologies. He keeps his voice even where engineering and wonder share a sleeve. The new birds rise in batches, shine when angles agree, dim when the math takes its due. A few feel like graffiti. A few feel like a letter someone had to write big to be read from a long road. Light before fear. Hood flashlights. Let the eyes audition. He sets his palm on the fence rail. Wood warms in a perfect ring, exact as a mug, and keeps the heat a measured breath after he lifts it, as if timber had practiced remembering. On the outer face of a car window behind him, a faint print blooms to mirror the one inside where a hand steadied a camera. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge a hair too long. The wipe cloth keeps the warmth 1 sentence more than cloth should, and then concedes to glass. He opens a pocket log because batteries enjoy not being asked. 2059, first element clears tree. 21.07, train dense. 2112, flare near zenith. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks and a 5th crossed through, tidy as accounting learned from orbit. Graphite smudges his thumb. The page beneath warms in a circle the size of a tin cup and cools obediently. He listens while the spectators invent decorum. Someone whispers, "Wow," as if they'd been taught. Someone else begins to clap and quits halfway out of respect for distance. A farm dog tests 3 barks. Pause. 1, then lies down and decides to watch. On a pole, the trail cam wakes and files what cams file when nouns fail. Person. No face, confidence not available, for a clip of dots walking homework time precision. He chalks a small cross low on the inside post of the gate, private courage, and by morning a faint twin shows outside too, as if oak learned to speak both directions through dew. Stencils on the gravel give the safe way. 3 arrows to the wide verge. Pause. 1 toward the ditch where shoes regret. He notes the little rights that keep orbits from stepping on feelings. App brightness low. No lasers. Names of constellations said softly enough that wrong ones feel welcome too. A bowl on the trunk of a car sits turned slightly inward the way a foot pauses at a threshold. The metal beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts the bowl to add a sweet, one has gone without a wrapper to accuse, and the paint looks as paint prefers. He looks up when the line thickens and the sky decides to forgive it. 3 bright cross the W of Cassiopeia in neat file. Pause. 1 dimmer hurries to catch up and is allowed. A flare swells and fades like a held breath. The clock on his phone is obedient, but the stove at home will blink 9:12 and, just for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once before remembering itself. He writes bulb because writing helps the mind behave. He ends the watch with work that looks like reverence and is. Chairs folded quietly, path left better, eyes given back to darkness. From the hedge comes the old pattern with orbital manners, 3 soft pulses, a pause, 1, arriving through sky that learned to be busy and useful without forgetting how to be kind. He cups his lamp and lets it lean like a listener before straightening, obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the train, practical, scheduled, unafraid, pretends it did not ask to be watched. He carries the glow around houses that have learned opinions, LED floods, passive infrared eyes taking attendance, apps that speak in neat blue tiles. A cat becomes a person, becomes a breeze, depending on the mood of the firmware. 3 porches bloom at once, pause, 1 sulks, and then decides to join. Light before fear is in the manual somewhere, mistranslated as sensitivity. He keeps his voice even where comfort and vigilance share a curb. Lights are promises made to ankles and keys. They also learn to be courtesies to passers-by. A pool of white meaning we see you, be well. The hub murmurs its entries. Driveway 1, porch, gate, like a clerk taking notes while pretending not to judge. He sets his palm on the mailbox. Steel warms in a perfect ring, exact as a mug, and keeps the heat a measured breath after he lifts it, as if metal had practiced remembering. On the outer pane of the sidelight glass, a faint print blooms to mirror the one inside where a hand steadied a cup. 5 ridges, a pause, 1 ridge slightly too long. The wipe cloth keeps the warmth 1 sentence more than cloth should and then lets it go. He opens the event log on the kitchen counter. 2057, porch on, PIR. 2106, driveway trigger. 21.12, gate clip saved. Between tidy lines, a pencil hand that will not sign adds 4 small marks and a 5th crossed through. Tidy as accounting learned from light. Graphite smudges his thumb. The page beneath warms in a circle the size of a candle plate and cools obediently. He listens while the sensors practice their manners. The porch floods step through 3 brightnesses as if climbing a stair. Pause. 1 more at the gate, chooses to be late. The doorbell rings its factory pre-tone and then, without help, offers 3 soft ticks. Pause. 1. As if it remembered a class it took from bells in another century. The app labels a clip the way all clips get labeled on nights like this. Person. No face. Confidence not available. And posts a thumbnail where the progress bar wears a small graphite tally. 4 marks. A 5th cross through. He chalks a small cross low on the inside panel. Private courage. And by morning, a faint twin shows outside too, as if paint learned to speak both directions through weather. 3 chalk arrows from the safe route flyer point toward the better-lit side path. Pause. 1 toward the darker run by the fence where decisions are made. Shoes choose the bright and forgive themselves. He notes the little rights that make machines behave like neighbors. Bulbs aimed down. not into other windows. Timers that know bedtime and forgive insomnia. A bowl sits on the threshold, turned slightly inward the way a foot pauses at a door. The board beneath warms in a ring. When he lifts the bowl to add a sweet, one has gone without a wrapper to accuse, and the plank looks like planks prefer. He looks out when a wind arrives that isn't wind exactly. The hedges give a shiver shaped like yes. The floods, which are not poets, still contrive a sentence. 3 rises, pause, 1, thin as a wire plucked across plastic. The stove clock blinks 9:12 and, for the width of a breath, 9:13 at once before remembering itself. He writes bulb because writing something helps. He ends the watch with work that looks like reverence and is. He sets the sensitivity a tick kinder, centers the bowl, speaks soft to the house that learned to think. From the walk, where cameras pretend not to admire their own reflections, the old pattern returns with firmware manners, 3 gentle pulses, a pause, 1, arriving through circuits that have learned how to be doors. He cups his lamp and lets it lean like a listener before straightening, obedient. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the sensor, useful, watchful, unafraid, pretends it did not just learn the knock. He lets the house cool back into honesty. Outlets remember to be holes. The refrigerator hum returns like a neighbor who knocks before coming over. The window carries last night's small twin print only as a memory of warmth. On the inside panel, his chalk sign is smaller than it felt. On the outer face, its faint brother has dried to the same courage. He walks the rooms like a clerk closing a ledger. The bowl on the threshold weighs less by an amount the hand can trust. The ring under his palm is only memory now, but memory is a kind of heat. The cat blinks at the door as though secrets should be seasonal. He opens the book. Dates, small arrows, phenomenon as ordinary as weather and as bright as being named, and finds the margin marked with the same tidy receipt. 4 pencil lines, a 5th crossed through. He listens at the door without opening it more than courtesy. From a long way off, river, street, wires forgiving themselves, the pattern that traveled through bog gas and ship masts, through glowworms and ash and the cleverness of cameras, clears its throat like gratitude. 3 gentle touches, a pause. 1. He counts with it the way hands count knots, older than fear, kinder than silence. He sets 1 wrapped sweet turned slightly inward, because treaties like consistency. The latch is kept, because daylight respects doors too. The stove clock holds a single minute without blinking. The porch light, tired from being helpful, sits obedient at off like a student at the end of a school assembly. He centers the bowl. He straightens the notebook. He lets the lamp lean like a listener and then be a lamp. Light before fear. Set the plate. Keep the latch. The counting continues, and the morning, practical, exact, unafraid, learns the door well enough to let it rest. Thanks for keeping the lamp low with me tonight. Before you drift off, add your City Plus local time in the comments, and tell me what you're listening on. iPhone, Android, TV, car, or earbuds. I'm building our quiet little night map. Which moment stayed with you? The marsh fire waiting at the ditch, the ceiling of glowworms, the blackout stars, the polite sensor floods, or the mountain that wrote our shadows in rings. I read every note. I post new calm history horror most nights. If this kept you company, subscribe after the video ends and tap the bell so the next file finds you at the right hour. Shares and gentle comments help more sleepy folks find us. I'll straighten the notebook, center the bowl, and leave the room how I found it. Lights low, latch kept. Care before fear, set the plate, keep the latch. Good night.